Recently, the New York Times published an op-ed titled, "I'm a genocide scholar, I know it when I see it." In it, author Omer Bartov, a professor of genocide studies, accuses Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. It's a very interesting article because this is not a piece written by a fringe activist or by an activist politician. It's written by an American-Israeli historian who is an expert in genocide studies, or so he claims. And it's published in one of the world's most influential and, according to some, most prestigious newspapers. I want to walk you through Omer's arguments and why I believe he's wrong to accuse Israel of the world's most serious crime under international law. His article is built on shaky definitions, emotional rhetoric, and selective quotations. There's no legal analysis, no investigation of battlefield conduct, and no serious engagement with international law. What Bartov does is reduce genocide to a few political statements and Hamas reported casualty numbers. If you're going to accuse a country of genocide, you better have more than a bunch of headlines and a few quotes taken out of context. You need evidence, legal intent, and a clear understanding of what genocide actually means. So let's start by defining what we're actually talking about. Genocide is a very specific crime. Rafał Lemkin, the Polish Jewish legal scholar who lost dozens of family members in the Holocaust, coined the term genocide and defined it as follows. Genocide is the destruction of a nation or an ethnic group. It is intended to signify a coordinated plan of different actions aiming at the destruction of essential foundations of the life of national groups, with the aim of annihilating the groups themselves. And international law has upheld this definition. Under the UN Genocide Convention, genocide means acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Omer Bartov needs to demonstrate that Israel has the intent to destroy the Palestinian people and that it is waging war to destroy the Palestinian people as a group. So let's break down his claims one by one. Claim number one. Netanyahu said Hamas would pay a huge price.
In addition, I ordered a wide call for reservists to fight back with might and scope that the enemy does not know. The enemy will pay a price he did not know until now.
Bartov claims that this statement by Netanyahu made on October 7th reflects genocidal intent and a desire for collective punishment of Palestinians. What's the reality? The reality is that that comment was made in direct response to the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, the mass murder, rape, torture and abduction of civilians by Hamas. This statement is the kind of thing that any national leader would say in the aftermath of a horrific terror attack. I mean, imagine if this had happened, if October 7th had happened in your own country, your people had been attacked. Wouldn't you want your leaders to punish the perpetrators? This statement doesn't target Palestinians as a people, it targets Hamas, which is a designated terrorist organization. Anger after an atrocity like October 7th is really not genocide, it's just human.
We are at war. Not an operation, not rounds, but at war. This morning, Hamas opened a murderous surprise attack against the state of Israel and its citizens.
Also, by the way, Netanyahu uses that turn of phrase quite often. He used it in December 2024 after a Houthi attack.
הם לומדים והם ילמדו בדרך הקשה שמי שפוגע בישראל משלם על כך מחיר כבד מאוד.
He said the same thing about Iran in June of 2025.
We embarked on a war of salvation against a double threat of annihilation, and we're doing it with vigor. Our soldiers, our pilots are over the Iranian skies. Iran will pay a heavy price for the killings.
And interestingly, he used that turn of phrase about his own people, about Israeli soldiers in December 2023, when he said that Israelis have paid a heavy price for the war in Gaza.
המלחמה גובה מאיתנו מחיר כבד מאוד. אבל אין לנו ברירה אלא להמשיך להילחם.
Claim number two. Netanyahu said Hamas will be destroyed and civilians should evacuate.
את כל המקומות שהחמאס נערך בהם, של עיר הרשע הזאת, כל המקומות שהחמאס מסתתר בהם, פועל מתוכם, נהפוך אותם לאיי חורבות. אני אומר לתושבי עזה, צאו משם עכשיו, כי אנחנו נפעל בכל מקום ובכל העוצמה.
Bartov claims that these two statements taken together show disregard for civilian life or even a desire to remove Palestinians from the land. So what's the reality? Destroying Hamas is a military objective, it's not a genocidal one. Telling civilians to evacuate combat zones is not only legal under international law, it's literally a sign of compliance with the laws of armed conflict. Israel drops leaflets, they send text messages, they make phone calls, they open evacuation corridors. This is the opposite of how a genocide operates. In an actual genocide, civilians are targeted. Here, they are warned and protected, often at a strategic cost to Israeli military aims. Claim number 3. Remember Amalek, a biblical reference.
Mr. Netanyahu, in his address to the Israeli forces on 28 October 2023, preparing for the invasion of Gaza, urged the soldiers to remember what Amalek has done to you.
זכור את אשר עשה לך עמלק, נצטווינו. אנו זוכרים ואנו נלחמים.
Bartov claims that Netanyahu's invocation of this phrase proves genocidal intent because Amalek was a tribe described in the Bible as needing to be wiped out. What's the reality? This is a seriously misleading interpretation of the phrase remember Amalek, which is a part of Jewish historical consciousness. It's a metaphor for eternal vigilance against existential threats. How can we prove this? It's literally engraved on the walls of Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust memorial. It also appears on the Holocaust Memorial in The Hague. It's not a call to genocide, it's a reminder to remember evil and prevent it, especially when it targets Jews. To portray it otherwise is very disingenuous and culturally illiterate, which is surprising because Omer Bartov is an Israeli American. Claim number 4. Gallant, the former Minister of Defense of Israel, called Hamas fighters human animals.
אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם.
Bartov claims that this language dehumanizes Palestinians and therefore indicates genocidal ideology. What's the reality? Yes, Yoav Gallant did say that, but he was referring specifically to Hamas terrorists, not to the Palestinian people. And he said this immediately after the October 7th atrocity. He said this right at the start of the Israel-Hamas war in October 2023. He said it following this brutal attack that claimed the lives of 1,000 of his compatriots. And he watched the abduction of many civilians, excluding children such as Kfir and Ariel Bibas, who were kidnapped, along with their mother Sheri Bibas. There's no international law that prohibits anger or emotionally charged language after witnessing war crimes. Bartov's claim stretches the definition of genocidal intent beyond absurdity. Claim number 5. Statements by far-right politicians like Bezalel Smotrich and Nissim Vaturi. Bartov claims that these individuals use inflammatory rhetoric which supports the accusation of genocide against Israel. What's the reality? Smotrich and Vaturi are far-right politicians disliked by most Israelis. They're not military commanders. They don't issue operational orders, they don't control the IDF, and they certainly don't shape battlefield policy. Their statements, which at times are extreme and inappropriate, and everyone in Israel, I think most people in Israel would agree with that, have no legal weight in evaluating how Israel conducts war. Bartov uses the words of fringe politicians to smear the military, which is in fact operating within the framework of international humanitarian law, with visible, documented restraint. So what's the conclusion to Bartov's claims? None of the 5 claims of genocide meet the actual definition of genocide, a proven, sustained, coordinated intent to destroy a people. What these statements do show is certainly frustration, they show grief, and they prove very harsh political rhetoric after the October 7th massacre. And by the way, that harsh rhetoric is super common to the entire Middle East. If you think the Israeli far-right is radical, you should listen to some Islamists around the region, around the Middle East, saying absolutely insane things. Does that rhetoric prove genocide? I mean, now that you've heard my arguments, surely you'd agree that it's not even close. If this is what passes for proof in genocide studies, if what Bartov wrote is proof, then we're not dealing with legal scholarship, we're dealing with literal political theatre. So now that we've gone through Bartov's arguments, let's analyze some aspects of this war. Firstly, let's look at how Israel fights. Israel's taken extraordinary steps to protect civilians in Gaza. Phone calls, text messages, leaflets, broadcast warnings, humanitarian corridors, delays and pauses in operations to allow evacuations, real-time tracking of civilian presence, building by building. Missions have been delayed or called off because civilians, especially children, were nearby. I think it's a fair claim to make that no country in history has done more to aid civilians in enemy territory during war than Israel has in Gaza. 94,000 plus aid trucks, 1.8 million tons of humanitarian aid, fuel and medical evacuations, support for hospitals and water infrastructure. Over 36,000 Gazans were treated outside the Gaza Strip. Even during combat, Israel has coordinated millions of vaccine doses, opened safe routes, and enabled delivery of food, fuel, and medicine. The US-Israeli Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has alone delivered over 82 million meals. If Israel was conducting a genocide, or ethnic cleansing, why would it be providing and implementing all of these humanitarian policies? Now let's look at the death toll. Bartov, in his article, cites death tolls from the Hamas-controlled Gazan Ministry of Health. He takes them at face value without any skepticism. He repeats the numbers, like 58,000 dead and 17,000 children. It's important to note, yet again, that Hamas is a terrorist organization, and there is very clear evidence that they manipulate the numbers. Because why wouldn't they? They, for example, count combatants as civilians. They call anyone who is under the age of 18 a child, even those who are actively fighting in the war. According to Andrew Fox's analysis for the Henry Jackson Society, Hamas death lists have included duplicates, fake names, and even living people. Civilian deaths in Gaza are obviously tragic, but many of the deaths are the direct results of Hamas's tactics of hiding in mosques, hiding in schools, hiding in hospitals and homes, using their own civilians, Palestinians, especially children. In Gaza, unfortunately, civilian suffering is part of the strategy of Hamas. Also, it's important to note that Gaza's population is larger today than it was at the start of the Israel-Hamas war in 2023. If this is genocide, it's the world's least successful one. Now, if the Israel-Hamas war is genocide, then every war is genocide. If we apply Bartov's logic to any other major conflict in recent years, wouldn't the Korean War be a genocide? After all, it claimed the lives of 2 million civilians, some 54,000 per month. Wouldn't the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan be counted as genocides? After all, there were hundreds of thousands of dead there. Wouldn't the war against ISIS, in which entire cities were leveled, Mosul, Raqqa, Fallujah, and tens of thousands of civilians killed, wouldn't that be a genocide? None of those were labeled genocide because war is not the standard of genocide. War is judged not by body counts, but by 3 clear metrics: the intent of commanders, the objectives of the operation, and how closely the military adheres to the laws of war. Under international law, war is not illegal, but certain actions in war are. The law requires distinction between combatants and civilians, proportionality of force, precautions to protect innocent life. Israel is doing all 3, and it's doing so often at a tactical cost. What's happening in Gaza is tragic. It really is. War always is tragic. But this war, the Israel-Hamas war, is not genocide.